It's Saturday the 26th of September, so I'm once again running in the East Dunes. I'm just going to do I think probably a similar run to last week but in reverse direction, so I'm going through the dunes first. Then I'm going to bend down into Old Wassenaar and then come back into the Hague. So I want to again practice this walk-run technique. Walk for a minute, run the rest of the kilometre and repeat, and see how that goes this week. Just try that out. It's disappointing, but the infection rates have been going up, so of course the quarantine requirement in going back to the UK hasn't been changed, so I won't be doing the Clarendon next week for the first time in 5 years that I've done that. 4 years. So my apologies to Kenny, who I was going to run with, and Andy and Owen, who I won't see as well, who I was hoping to meet up with, and JJ and the Rotary members and all the volunteers, marshals, aid station volunteers, who always do such a fantastic job. I know it's going to be extra difficult this year with social distancing and all the coronavirus measures in place, but best of luck to everybody for that. I'll try and run it with you, but virtually. So I'll probably be running into the dunes. I've got to find some hilly-ish routes to try and even replicate part of the Clarendon. And for those who don't know, the Clarendon Marathon, I was actually going to do the half this year, and the marathon itself runs on the Clarendon Trail, which is a mainly dirt trail. Occasionally there's sections of tarmac, particularly when you come through the villages. But it runs all the way from the city of Salisbury in the south of England across to the city of Winchester. Now the marathon, for obvious reasons, with people, starts outside Salisbury, finishing just outside Winchester. But if you do Clarendon Trail fully, if you do it on your own, which I have done, it is from city centre to city centre, and mainly trails, as I said, in between, and you can pretty much run from the door of Salisbury Cathedral through to the doors of Winchester Cathedral. So there's a song about that. Well, there's a song at least about one of them, not both. Anyway, we'll see how this run goes too. It'll be similar to last week, about 25 kilometres. Much cooler. Been a huge amount of rain, big storms coming across from the North Sea from England's direction the last few days. Never gets particularly wet in the dunes, but it's certainly cooled everything down, which is actually nice, because I found last weekend too hot again with the direct sun. It's getting well into the 20s and just felt a bit uncomfortable for me. So that's it. So fortunately I won't be travelling, but I'll be there in spirit and hopefully running at a similar time across a similar distance. Yeah, and best of luck to everybody. Just coming up to the Wassenaar Beach Road, the Wassenaar side, and then I turn down into Old Wassenaar. So here I am again going to the Old Wassenaar area through the woods alongside the canal, river here. So as I mentioned, the infection rates unfortunately kept going up both here and in the UK and in Europe basically, and rates here now, I think it's just over 13 per 100,000 per day, and the UK is around about 10, just over 10 per 100,000. I've just announced some further measures in the UK. There's a couple of universities that have had to confine students to the accommodation, so that is more like lockdown. They keep them, media keep referring to it generally in the country as lockdown, but it's not really. Compared with March and April, it's well, the main provision seems to be now is getting families not to meet in homes, so basically banning that in areas where the infection's got particularly high. So this weekend, Cardiff and Swansea and Llanelli in Wales, and already was parts of Birmingham, parts of Manchester, Leeds, the latest one, and then London isn't yet with those additional provisions, but it's on the so-called watch list. But it's noticeable there's this very distinct urban-rural effect. Now, as we know, distancing is one of your biggest assets, particularly with this virus. Of course, it's much easier to distance if you live in a rural or even suburban environment compared with if you live in a city environment, and even more so, you know, your risks increase then if you're part of the working population, those that need to go out to work, particularly frontline care workers, aid workers, and all those kind of core workers, like, you know, in food and drink and things like that. So we'll see if those provisions, they seem to have pulled things in Leicester a few weeks ago, seems to help. Yes, you have to take a bit of a sacrifice as a city, but it then hopefully means you can ease up a little bit later, rather than having to keep locking down even further and further and further as the virus escalates. Caerphilly in South Wales is showing reduced rates of infection, given that they had to not lock down, but, you know, do that domestic isolation, I'd call it. You know, you can't meet in your home with anybody other than those in your family bubble. And having used to have lived in Caerphilly, that was another one that struck home, living this far away in another country, looking at what's happened there. So I think I mentioned last week, the Dutch, by comparison, have announced, there was a big announcement last week, they're going to bring these new provisions in, and you go, oh dear, it's back to, you know, at least as strict, if not stricter than what the UK is imposing. And it wasn't really. It was pubs, restaurants have to close by 1 o'clock in the morning, not 10 o'clock as it is in the UK, and can't allow new customers into a bar or a restaurant after midnight. So quite mild in comparison to what they've announced in the UK's general provisions. Remember, the 10 o'clock closing of pubs is actually nationwide now. Well, it's always nice when you discover a new path. So this is one that's new on me, because I normally run on the other side of the road, so I think I missed the kind of hidden entrance to this one. And I've run through here, must be half a dozen to 10 times on this similar route, and I've never spotted this reserve here. And they actually, you can't walk your dogs in here, so I'm assuming this is nature and kind of a bird and nature reserve here, part of the East Dunes. So I'll see where this brings me out, because I'm assuming it's going to bring me back on the road that I normally run along. It might bring me up into one of the estates, and then I'll just have to double back. That's all right. Oh, a little bit wet on here. Yeah, that was quite nice. In there, it's just a little nature reserve area, but it is just a loop in there. So unfortunately, I was hoping it would turn out further up this road, but as it was, I had to do the whole loop, go back to the start, and then come back onto this path to carry on. So a nice little diversion. But yeah, it's a shame there's lots of areas like that along here on this side of the dunes, but you can't get through the dunes to the other side where I was running before, because of, I think, a lot of preservation, but also the combination. I think there's a golf course in there as well, the perennial barrier to all trails, and also historically there's been military in the area as well, so occasionally you come across tank trails. So obviously they don't want you in there for safety reasons, and presumably for security reasons as well. Anyway, so that's 17 kilometres up, so I should have another 8 to go, but with that diversion it's probably about maybe 9 kilometres to go, so it might be about 26 by the time I've finished. There you go. Anyway, it's nice and pleasant through here, even if it is running on tarmac. Back in The Hague at Shaving and Bolsjes, actually walking past the Katshuis, residence of the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, at the moment. It's currently incumbent. Yeah, so that was pretty straightforward. 26 kilometres in the end. I'm a little bit further from home than I was last week, so that probably meant that diversion was about 1.5 to 2 kilometres that I did. But as I said, it was quite nice actually to have a little bit of a diversion off of the road or the paths. So just going to do a bit of recovery, have a nice meal this evening, and then have a look at the routes in the national park for next Sunday, so that I can, at least in spirit, run alongside everybody running in the Clarendon Marathon and Half Marathon in the south of England next week. Anyway, that's it. It's a very nice day. The wind's dropped now, so it's got a little bit warmer, but very nice for the end of September.